Since the beginning of time, the human mind has grappled with one of the deepest and most unsettling questions. Where did God come from? If everything in the universe has an origin, what is the starting point of the Creator? This question not only challenges our faith, but also puts logic and reason to the test. The concept of an eternal being without beginning or end directly collides with our perception of cause and effect. After all, how can something simply exist forever? The greatest philosophers, theologians, and scientists have spent centuries trying to unravel this enigma. Plato, Aristotle, St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, and even modern physicists like Stephen Hawking have wrestled with this issue. But in the end, every attempt to answer it generates even more questions. If God has always existed, what was there before him? If he was created, who created him? And if there was a time when God did not exist, how did the first moment of reality come to be? The truth is that our mind, limited by time and space, struggles to conceive of a being that transcends these barriers. From childhood, we learn that everything has a beginning and an end. We build our understanding of the world based on natural cycles, births, deaths, seasons, events that always have a starting point and an end point. But God does not fit these patterns. He does not follow the rules that govern the physical world. He is the author of those rules. If there was something before God, then that something would be the true Creator. However, the very idea of a being superior to God becomes illogical. God, by definition, is the absolute being, the ultimate origin of everything. If we needed to attribute an origin to him, then he would cease to be God. This question leads us to a profound dilemma. If everything we know requires a cause, why would God be the exception? This is the great logical trap into which many fall. But the answer lies in the very concept of eternity. Everything that has a beginning needs a cause. But that which has no beginning does not require an origin. God did not come into being, he simply always was. To understand this, we need to break through the barriers of our common perception of reality. The universe we live in is governed by time. Before and after are fundamental concepts for our existence. But what if there were something beyond time, something that existed independently of past, present, and future? This is the key to understanding the nature of God. In modern physics, there is an intriguing principle. Time, space, and matter are inseparable. If there is matter, it must exist somewhere, space, and at some point, time. But before the creation of the universe, there was no time, no space, no matter. This means that the Creator could not be composed of these substances. God is beyond matter, beyond time, and beyond space. He is the very source of existence, something that transcends all limitations of physical reality. The Bible pointed to this truth long before modern science began investigating it. The first verse of Genesis declares, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." This sentence contains a striking detail. "In the beginning" refers to time. The heavens symbolize space. The earth represents matter. This means that creation involved three fundamental elements that make up the structure of the universe. But if God created all of this, then he himself cannot be part of that creation. If God were bound by time, he could not be eternal. If he were limited by space, he could not be infinite. If he depended on matter, he could not be immutable. But God is not confined by any of these limitations. He is the one who transcends the laws we know, the only being whose existence depends on nothing external. But if God is eternal, how can he interact with a finite world? How can an immaterial being manifest in a reality composed of matter? This question has fascinated both theologians and scientists throughout the centuries, and the answer leads us to another dimension of understanding, the relationship between God and his creation. The universe did not arise by chance. It was designed with precise laws, organized in a way that allows for life and consciousness. Quantum physics, biology, and mathematics reveal a stunning complexity in the structure of reality. Invisible laws maintain the balance of nature. DNA carries codes so intricate that they defy any purely random explanation. The precision of universal constants, like gravity and the speed of light, is so finely tuned that any slight variation would render existence impossible. This leads us to an inevitable conclusion. There is intelligence behind creation. Just as software cannot arise without a programmer, the universe cannot simply have organized itself. It requires a creator, and this creator is not merely an impersonal force, but a being with intention, purpose, and unlimited power. But what if the universe is eternal? This is an alternative put forth by some scientists and philosophers. The idea that the cosmos has always existed and never had a beginning seems to eliminate the need for a creator. However, this hypothesis conflicts with modern scientific discoveries. The Big Bang, for instance, points to a specific moment when time, space, and matter came into existence. This means the universe had a beginning. And if there was a beginning, then something or someone had to give rise to it. Many argue that science can explain the origin of the universe without resorting to God. But in reality, even scientific explanations depend on something that already existed beforehand. Quantum fields, vacuum fluctuations, hidden dimensions, all these theories assume that something was already present before the universe emerged. The fundamental question remains unanswered. Where did that something come from? If even science acknowledges that something must always have existed, why not consider that this something is God? After all, any alternative we try to imagine inevitably leads to the same point: the existence of an eternal reality. This is a truth that unsettles many skeptics. After all, admitting that God is eternal means accepting that there is something beyond what we can comprehend. This requires humility, something difficult for the human mind. We want concrete answers, facts we can measure, weigh, and analyze. But God is beyond any scientific instrument. His existence cannot be confined to formulas or equations. He simply is. In the Gospels, Jesus made a striking statement: "Before Abraham was, I am." John 8:58. He did not say "I was," but "I am." This phrase indicates a timeless existence beyond the limitations of time. Jesus, the manifestation of God on earth, declared himself eternal. This brings us to a final reflection. If God has always existed, and if he created everything that exists, then our own existence has a purpose. We are not the result of chance, but part of a greater plan. Every star in the sky, every falling leaf, every detail of the universe points to a creator who established everything with order and precision. And now, faced with this truth, one essential question remains: what will our response be? If there is one undeniable truth across all cultures, religions, and philosophical systems, it is the search for the meaning of existence. And this search inevitably leads us to the fundamental question: why is there something rather than nothing? The universe is a spectacle of order and beauty, but its very existence raises questions that science, no matter how advanced, still cannot fully answer. If everything has a beginning, then what came before the beginning? Scientists who study the origin of the cosmos assert that the universe had an initial moment. The Big Bang, the great cosmic explosion, marks the birth of everything we know: space, time, energy, and matter. Before that, there was nothing, at least nothing we can comprehend. But this leads us to another question. Can something truly arise from nothing? If there was no time, what caused that initial moment to happen? If there was no space, where did the universe appear? And if there was no matter, what exploded? Many scientists try to escape this question by suggesting that quantum laws would allow the universe to emerge spontaneously. But these explanations fail on one critical point. Quantum laws are something, not nothing. For something to arise, there must be at least one pre-existing fundamental principle. The central question remains: who or what set everything in motion? The Bible offers a simple yet profound answer. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. In a single sentence, this statement establishes a fundamental truth. The universe had a beginning, and that beginning was caused by God. Contrary to what many think, Christian faith is not a blind leap into the unknown. On the contrary, it is based on evidence and logic. If there is a creator, then everything that exists has a purpose. But then arises another question that troubles both believers and skeptics. If God created everything, who created God? This is the question that seems to unravel the entire logic of divine existence. However, this question stems from a basic error. It assumes that God is part of the created reality when, in fact, he is above it. The very concept of creation implies a beginning, but God had no beginning because he has always existed. When we ask who created God, we are applying the logic of cause and effect to a being who is outside that system. God is not an object within the universe. He is the very origin of existence. Science teaches us that everything with a beginning needs a cause. But that which has no beginning does not need to be created. If God were created, he would cease to be God, for he would depend on something prior to him. This idea of an eternal being can be uncomfortable for the human mind. We are accustomed to thinking in terms of past, present, and future. Our lives are limited by time, but God is not bound by that limitation. He doesn't was or will be, he simply is. This is why when Moses asked God his name, the answer was, "I am who I am." Exodus 3:14. In the physical world, everything is subject to change. Time passes, things age, empires fall, stars fade. But God does not change. He is not subject to the passage of time because he created time. He cannot be measured by space because he is the creator of space. He cannot be destroyed because he is the source of life. This means that God's existence is not a matter of blind belief. On the contrary, it is the only logical explanation for the existence of everything. If God did not exist, then we would have to accept that the universe arose from nothing, a hypothesis that defies all logic and science. But there are those who say, what if the universe is eternal? What if it has always existed without needing a creator? This idea has been considered by philosophers and scientists throughout the centuries. However, modern evidence indicates that the universe had a beginning. The very concept of entropy, the natural tendency of energy to dissipate, suggests that the universe is wearing down. If it were eternal, it would have exhausted itself long ago. Moreover, if the universe were eternal, it would never have reached the present moment. Imagine a clock that was never started. It would never begin to tick. Likewise, if the universe had existed forever, it would never have arrived at now. This means there was an initial moment, a point when everything began, and everything that has a beginning needs a cause. Atheists who reject the idea of God must resort to other explanations. Some speak of an infinite multiverse, where new universes are constantly generated. Others mention quantum fluctuations that would spontaneously give rise to reality. But in the end, these theories merely shift the problem to another level. They still require an explanation for the origin of that multiverse or those fluctuations. The great truth is that there is no escape. Something eternal must exist. Whether we call it the laws of physics, multiverse, primordial energy, or God, the fact remains that something has always been present. The difference lies in recognizing what that something truly is. If even the greatest atheist thinkers acknowledge that certain truths are eternal, why not consider that a creator could also be eternal? The mathematician and philosopher Daniel Dennett, for example, admits that concepts like numbers and equations were not created. They simply exist. If we accept that abstract ideas can be timeless, why not accept that an intelligent being can be uncreated? The answer to the question, who created God, is not just theological, it is philosophical and scientific. God does not need a cause, because he is the primary cause of everything. He is not part of the physical world, so his rules do not apply to the laws of nature. He is beyond time and space, beyond matter and energy. If we grasp this, we realize that the very question, who created God, is as absurd as asking, what is the sound of silence? Or, what is the color of the wind? We are trying to apply the rules of a limited system to something that transcends all limitations. And if God truly exists and created everything with a purpose, it means our existence is not an accident. We are not a mistake of chance. We are not merely matter organized over billions of years. We are part of a greater plan, designed by a creator with absolute power over everything. Faced with this truth, we have only two choices: ignore it or accept it. The search for the meaning of life and the origin of the universe will always lead us to this fundamental reality. The question is not just who created God, but rather, what is our role within this creation?